Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Soul Talk. I have a very special guest all the way across the pond, my good friend Darren. Darren, how you doing today?
Hello, I'm all good. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much for asking.
How cold is it for you right now?
It is freezing in the UK and it's about to go dark for the night, but it's all
Oh,
good.
no. Yeah, it is. Right now that we're recording, it's 5 p.m. for Darren. It's noon for me over on the East Coast. So, yeah, if you see the sun going down behind Darren, he's not going into the abyss. It's just that it's nighttime for him. But
It's cold, but it's beautiful still. I'm outside, so it's nice.
it's always nice to be outside, even when it's cold. I don't like the cold weather, but I still enjoyed being outside even when I lived in Tennessee and Kentucky. But
This is like a treat for me at the moment to be outside. So I've got to make the most of it.
gotta get a little bit of that sun, even though it looks cloudy right now behind you.
Yeah, I can't really see the other view. 1 second. There we go.
Yeah, that's pretty cloudy out over yonder. You can see more of the sun going through my window right now than you can see with you outside. But let's get right into this show. We're going to start with our recent reads. So, Darren, what have you recently been reading?
Okay, so my recent read is the new Jedi story from Charles Soule, which is Light of the Jedi. Finally a prequel book in the new era of Star Wars.
And how do you like it so far?
I finished it about a week ago. It's really good. It's got some of the same old tropes, but with a more medieval kind of vibe to it. Like the Jedi are more in tune with their powers. There's at the start of the book there isn't as much conflict, so you get a really good introduction to the characters and how in tune they are with the Force before everything goes wrong as usual, because if the Jedi don't have something to fix, what are they going to do with themselves, really?
Exactly. If there was no conflict throughout the whole book, it's like, what's going on then? Like, what are we reading about? I really enjoyed this book as well. This book did one of the most interesting things that I've never, like, no other book that I've read done it before, and that was introduce characters right at the beginning and immediately kill them off.
Yes,
So, like,
exactly.
you think, oh, this is our main character, and then it's like, nope, dead. Next chapter, oh, this is now our main character. That other person's not. Nope, dead.
Yeah, it's kind of the opposite to the Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan story. So where you're so used to seeing them together, and they immediately split them up to give them a new arc to work with, whereas the one person is still trying to learn how to change from being a Padawan to a master, which happens very quickly, which is very reminiscent of the Anakin story, but in a completely different way, where he spends a lot of time trying to work his way through why what happens. And this was weird as well, because normally I read the Star Wars books. This was my first audio book, so it was coming from a very different perspective, hearing the sounds of hyperspace. Charles Soule, the audiobook person, whose name escapes me right now, doing all the different voices and the sound effects. It was a very different experience, but it did not take away any less enjoyment. So that was the main thing.
I originally read it like just on the book, and then I was listening to From a Certain Point of View, the one from the first Star Wars movie. I have not gotten to The Empire Strikes Back yet, but that one, and I was listening to the audiobook of that, and I was like, wow, this is amazing. It has Star Wars sounds in it. So, like, you
Yeah,
can hear when they're shooting their guns. You can hear when the lightsabers ignited. You can hear when they're going into hyperspace, or when the stormtroopers are walking. And I was like, oh, I need to listen to the audiobook. So I started to listen to the audiobook of Light of the Jedi. And I'm like,
yeah.
oh, this is really cool. Why have I not been listening to Star Wars audiobooks?
The versatility of the reader to use different accents for different aliens and have that offset with the sound effects and the sound of space almost, and it really helps you put your mind's eye into the story, and you can sit there just in a dark room and just listen to it play out in front of your mind, and it really adds that really good dimension to the story.
Right. And what we've learned from like the animated series too is like the Twi'leks have like a French accent. They're from Space France, apparently. Just I joke about Space Boston for Bill Burr and
Yeah.
and all these, but
Well, I
and
love.
so
Yeah. Sorry, carry on.
when you have the Twi'leks speaking in the book, it is in that French accent. So yeah, having those different accents for each type of alien.
Yeah, it gives you a sense of how a species has adapted to space travel from their home planet and stuff like that. And it gives you a sense of how they might act in the future during the story. Whereas when you're trying to make that up in your head when reading, it just sounds like everyone sounds like yourself.
Right.
It adds that little bit of extra believability in how they might act during the story.
So, which other High Republic books are you most looking forward to going forward?
Well, I'm a big fan of chronological orders. So obviously, because the UK we get everything last. We've only got the one book for now. The new book doesn't come out till July.
Oh,
So,
really?
so I just much like how films are released, you get the start of a story, and now you have to wait and anticipate what might happen afterwards.
Right.
Because what I love about the Life of the Jedi is the ending, and it lead. So you've got the new one already. Show off. So I now have to wait and anticipate what might happen after the ending of the first book. But I also have other stuff in between, which is good. So I can
I will
also
make sure not to spoil you, Darren.
yeah
I will be nice.
I can also the beauty of it as well. You can always go back and read certain chapters on an audiobook, just to keep yourself fresh. And like I said, I have the Audible subscription, so I have got the certain point of view books already lined up, ready to read. I've just got to pick a day to do it. As you know me already, I have got a plethora of options to do things. I just never decide what to do.
Hey, you started watching anime, which is a little teaser for what we're going to talk about later
Exactly.
from mine
Broadening my
and
horizons.
Brian's recommendations. So I'm excited to talk about that when we get to that. But any last words on Light of the Jedi?
I think the thing I enjoyed most about the story was everything's very new, but also very old at the same time. There's hyperspace is being explored. They go into a lot of descriptions about how the hyperspace lanes were created, which I'm a complete nerd when it comes to like geography and stuff like that. So I ate that up all day. The descriptions of the planets. That's what I love. I am a big fan of species and how they act and stuff like that. So the story, it helps get lost in the story when you can understand why the Nihil acted the way they do, how similar but very different they were from the Sith, and you get those great discussions in the future about who do you prefer, prequel baddies, sequel baddies. Can you see similarities between the leader of the Nihil and Kylo Ren? And then I get to talk for hours, which talking for hours is my favorite thing to do.
Same. We do that all the time in Roka's Discord. One thing too that I like about books as well, which like you, I'm a total nerd for geography. So when a book has a map at the very beginning, before the first chapter, I'm like, ooh, I can know where these things are. And anytime like a place is mentioned, like I'll go back to the map and I'm like, oh, I want to look at this map. So
Yeah, the expansion of the universe was fantastic because for so many years we've had legends be more or less a caveat in the Star Wars universe because it's very hard to tell what still exists, what has existed or doesn't now exist, like Darth Bane, Darth Revan, for example. And it's like, at what point are they going to decide, right, finally we're going to make this an official history so that when I take this onto my kids in the next few years, hopefully, I'll be able to explain better. Like 10 years ago, I'll be like, all this stuff existed but really didn't. but and they are
But
slowly
now it
but
does.
surely, yeah, but slowly but surely they are giving us a definite history to push on, so that when we get episode 10, 11, and 12, it's going to be a more stable timeline to describe.
Mm. And they have been pulling stuff from legends, like, for example, Thrawn and other characters of that. So I'm excited to see what else they pull from legends. I'm not like that knowledgeable about legends. Like, I know the character names, but I
Same
didn't
here,
really
yeah.
read any of the books. So, like, the characters sound cool and people get very excited about it. So I'm always excited for people who get
Yeah,
excited.
it seems like a new thing, but like I didn't get into Star Wars till the 90s, when I was I was like 10, 11 years old. Now it seems like a long time ago, but back then it's pretty late in your to come into Star Wars. When, like I say, 1999 came along and the Phantom Menace, I was like an average fan, and then from Phantom Menace, that's when I went hell for leather. So the legend stuff
A
completely
person of
passed
the
me by.
prequels.
Now, like if you were to ask me to have a discussion about Rebels, I could be here for like 6 hours, because that
That's
that's
next
my
time.
yeah that's my meat and veg, to use an English phrase. That's where I really realised that Star Wars was my passion, and that's only a couple of years ago. So
Yeah. And shout out to the Outlaw Nation YouTube channel. They we recently had Laura Kelly on, and she talked about how Rebels was kind of like her what she considers her Star Wars, her introduction.
yeah,
I myself, I was born in the 90s, so the prequels were my introduction to Star Wars. So
exactly.
Attack of the Clones always holds a special place in my heart because it's the first Star Wars movie that I saw.
And it's like that discussion that John had with Laura Kelly was fantastic, because it just shows you that we're all so alike in so many ways. And the one good thing to come out of this digital era at the minute is we have been able to convalesce with people that we wouldn't expect. We would never would have known have had the same passions as us.
Mm.
And from 1,000 miles away, I can now have discussions about it. Whereas where I am here, there is very few people that share that same amount of passion. So
100%. I love all the new friends that I've gotten from all over the world just from being online. So I know being online gets a lot of flack, and there is terrible things about online, but then there's also wonderful things like now I'm friends with Darren, who lives all the way in the UK. But
yeah, and
oh,
it will
go ahead.
lead.
Sorry.
Sorry, it's okay. It will lead up to a surprise arrival at the Schmodown Spectacular in December, hopefully. And
Hopefully, yes.
I'll just turn up in America on stage, challenge Ryko to a match again.
Yes. Well, let's go into my recent read, which, again, a little spoiler for what we're going to be talking about a little later in this episode, is I've been reading the Vision comic. So I just finished volume one, and obviously I'm reading this because of WandaVision. So this book basically focuses around Vision, who has created a wife and children, and he lives in the suburbs of Washington, D.C. and Arlington, Virginia, and he pretty much like is just trying to live that suburban normal life, trying to be a human, trying to act human, and things of that nature. And he's the one who programmed his wife and kids as well, so he's trying to make it seem like they're a legitimate family and they're not just robots living in the house and living in suburban America. And you get characters which I don't know if this person's going to show up in WandaVision or not, but there is the villain Grim Reaper shows up in this. You also have Agatha Harkness in this comic. And then you have just like regular things that happen in like normal like TV shows, like the kids being rejected at school or the mother and father fighting over different ideologies and things of that nature. I'm trying not to spoil this book.
It's like the beauty of the MCU at the minute with stuff like this. It's like the roots of a tree. They all
Right.
go in different offshoots, but they all end up at the same base, which makes the tree. And there is cherry picking from the Vision comic, from the House of M, but they're all related. And that's I'm coming from the point of view of, because I haven't really ever read comics. Every episode is something new for me, and I'm learning as I'm going along. And then I have the beauty of, if I ever do want to read the comics to then envelop the story in the future, that option is there. But I'm never disappointed by not knowing a reason why something has happened whilst watching the show. So,
And then for Sparky the dog that was in the WandaVision show, I'm really curious to see what happens to the dog in this comic, because Sparky is in this comic.
yeah.
If what happens to the dog in this comic is going to happen to the dog in the show, if that dog's going to show up again.
Yeah,
So
they get certain allowances, obviously, because
yeah,
the vein of TV nowadays is what happens in TV is canon. So if it's something in the common, they can, that lovely word of retcon.
right.
But the beauty is, just because it happens in TV doesn't mean it can't be changed again in the future. Because as human nature will always show, we can have short memories, and something can happen now, and in 5-10 years, it can be changed.
100%.
Yes. Sorry to spoil anyone that's not watched Avengers Endgame, but yes, Tony Stark can die, but he can also be recreated and started again in 10 years, because there is a whole new generation of kids that are still too young to know that Tony Stark will have died in the 2000s, and in 2030 can be reborn and been told another story.
I think we might see him sooner. I think he's going to be the voice for Ironheart Riri Williams' suit.
Well, exactly, and it just shows the evolution of comics to visual representation, because whereas you've got Jarvis being the AI for Tony, and then Tony becomes the AI, and it shows the great evolution of comics to TV, just like comics have done for years and years. A different writer and a different illustrator can reset a universe, and
happens all the time.
Superheroes will never die. So
100%, because they need to keep selling these comics. So no death is permanent in the comics. Maybe in the movies, we'll see. But yeah, in the comics, not so much.
But that is the beauty of all this years and years of literature that we have, that these things are in the past now, like the House of M, the Vision comics. They're always going to be there, and they're never going to be any less enjoyable.
Right. And with this comic as well, you have, there's some fucked up shit that happens in this comic, especially with Vision's wife. So I don't want to spoil it, but I definitely would say go read it, because there's some stuff that happens and you're like, oh shit. So I highly recommend, especially if you're really enjoying WandaVision, I would say, because I've read House of M, I would say, yeah, read House of M. That's a staple Wanda Maximoff comic. But this one is so interesting, and you can see the stuff that is being pulled from this comic to be done in the show.
And I watch every review show that I possibly can to see people's different perspectives and what they can pick out of the comics. There is, I think it was Jay Washington the other day that said, in the House of M, Wanda isn't actually in it as a being a lot. She's spoken about. It's more about the mutants, and I didn't even know that. So that added an extra dimension to the possibility of what might happen in these next 2, possibly 3 episodes of WandaVision.
Yeah, I'm excited to see the end of the show, and I'm excited to see the big reveal.
Yeah, and what I love is time goes so fast now. It's literally nearly Friday again already in a couple of days,
right?
And it's time to get hyped again,
right? But let's Okay,
It's
go
nice
ahead.
of Disney. It's nice of Disney to give us a week off before they give us something new as well.
True. Well, although it just gives us more time to speculate, so they know what they're doing. Uh, but going now into, we're adding this segment again this week because myself and our mutual friend Bryant has been giving you some anime to watch. So, what anime have you been watching, Darren?
So I have done 2 shows so far. One show and then a movie trilogy. So I went onto Netflix and I watched the Godzilla trilogy, the new Netflix story of the Godzilla films, and I keep saying Steins Gate, but it's Steins Gate, I believe.
It's Steins Gate. You
Steins
actually have
Gate,
it correct.
yeah. So that's a Japanese anime series, 25 episodes, and they're about 20 minutes each. And I did it in kind of stages, but it had me at the first episode. The lead character is quirky, is my favorite word to use at the minute, and it took a while for me to understand what was going on. But once I got into the story, the next 19 episodes flew by. So it was a good entry into the genre because, like I said, I've watched cartoons all my life, but anime is a particular genre, and it was nice to get started. And like I say, now I have a list of like 40 different things to watch. So,
And definitely that's what happens with anime. They suck you in, and then you're like, oh, wow, 7 hours have passed by, and I've
yeah,
watched an entire series.
yeah.
Because
So
they're very short episodes.
yeah, so science fiction has always been my main love, and it has that to a T, time travel, but it's a typical Japanese style. It's like we can do time travel with a classic time travel plot device, but no, we're going to use a microwave, and that's I love the sense of humor, and slowly but surely you get into the ideas of the butterfly effect, which is the underbelly of the story, and it's no action goes without a reaction, and slowly but surely the characters are plotted in to every different time travel that he does. The name of the D-mails, that's what it's called. So every D-mail that the lead character reacts to change something that he doesn't like that's happened causes a different reaction, and every different episode answers a question but gives you 2 more questions. And then at the end he realizes that he has to be happy with the first choice he made, because sometimes your choices are inconsequential. It's you have this family around you that just want you to be happy, and the more you try and go back and change something that you did wrong, the worse you're going to make it for yourself and your friends. And I thought that was an absolutely beautiful idea to have. That by episode like 20, he realizes like I need to stop doing this because I am changing people's genders, and I am getting myself into this. He's chasing this organization that he would have never have had to chase if he didn't do the first change. And the more he changes, the more he loses the thing that he loves. And it's the inner monologue of him, like, if I had just admitted to myself I love this girl who's now a boy because I've kept changing it via these emails, I'd have just been happy to start with.
Right.
And it was fantastic. And the style of the show, not everything has to be in beautiful colour. That's what I got from this anime. It's the reason everything's pastel-y and vague and kind of from outside of you, from the background, is to show you that take a chance to just stop and realise what you have in front of your eyes.
Yeah, no, it is a beautiful anime. It's chock full with lessons. One thing I love too about this anime is that there's one incident that happens, and he keeps trying to go back to change it. And he keeps going back and keeps going back and keeps going back. And no matter what he does, he can't change that outcome. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, in the way that you were saying, he learns that, okay, yeah,
It takes
I
him a
can't
long
change
time
it.
to do it, but he's like, that was my destiny. But because you have that plot device of time travel, you think you can change what is you're meant to be. The sooner you can realize it, the sooner you can move on. And I think that's the whole idea of the show. The other thing I got from the anime itself in general was its dark humor. I did not expect the Japanese to have such a dark sense of humor.
Oh, they definitely do.
And it's so in your face and tongue in cheek that, like, if you don't get it, you don't get it. But some of the things that happen, it's very sexually oriented, which is obviously because the Japanese are such a repressed nation. But when they write it out and show it you, it's so funny. But they're not trying to do it in a comical way. It's a very awkward way. But that is what the comedy is.
Yeah, I love it that it's very much that dry humor too. And I love dry humor, and that's probably like why I like comedians from the UK as well, because their humor is very dry. And so it's the type of humor that I'm just like, this show's not supposed to be funny, but it is funny. Kind of like the movie The Death of Stalin. I love that movie, and my mom cannot tell why I think that movie is hilarious, and I think that movie is so funny.
I've heard of it, but it's on the watch list still. I have to wait for the random number to pick it. But like stuff like Men Who Stare at Goats and stuff like that, and anything from like Charlie Kaufman. You've got to zone in to get the jokes. Anything by Paul W.S. Anderson. The Grand Budapest Hotel. The humour is in the words. If you don't listen to it, you'll miss it. And then you'll be like, what did I just watch?
Right.
So you have to be careful, because sometimes it can go over your head and the jokes happen before you realise.
Well, you were just talking about your movies and your numbers, which Darren has been watching about like 10 movies a day, and he basically picks random numbers, and then those numbers correlate to a movie, and then he watches that movie. So you want to talk about the two of the recent movies you've watched that you've really enjoyed?
Yes. So obviously the random number, I used to just watch science fiction. So with everything that happened to me in the last year, I decided to challenge myself to watch different types of stories, movies from different years. So I spent 2-3 days going through all the streaming sites that I have available to me. Every movie that I've never seen, went on a list, got a number. And then, because obviously I want to watch so much, I could never choose. So random numbers means I don't get a choice anymore. The number tells me what I have to watch, and it makes the enjoyment so much better. So the two films I'm going to talk about in the episode are The Assassination of Jesse James by the coward Tom Ford, and what was the other one that I said?
Whiplash.
Whiplash, yes, that's the one. Yeah. So I'll start with Whiplash with Miles Teller, and I keep calling him John J. Jameson, because he's so synonymous with that character. Let's see if my movie knowledge is going to work with me. What can I remember is the actor's name?
Wait, I can pull up IMDb to see.
15 seconds, Darren. 15 seconds.
5. 5.
No.
J.K. Simmons. His
J.K.
character's
Simmons.
name.
I knew it. I knew it all along. So yes.
Oh, I thought you were asking the character name. I was like, I know it's J.K. Simmons. I forget his character's name.
So J.K. Simmons is a masterclass in this film. Because it took me so many. I've heard of this film for so many years, and I never watched it because I always thought people were skeptical of it because it promoted bullying. But what I learned, sometimes people fail to see in films, is the underlying reason why a character is the way there is. Whereas people think he's a bad guy, he's not playing a bad guy. He's playing somebody that is so passionate about the form of the music that he loves in jazz, and he wants to find that one person that his opus, his one musician that is going to be talked about for years to come in jazz. And Miles Teller, very young, very naive, he has the passion, but does he have the drive? And sometimes you have to be horrible to people to bring out that drive. And the movie does such a great job. It reminded the scenes that it shows you in the film are very reminiscent of Edgar Wright's zombie film with Simon Pegg, Shaun of the Dead.
Shaun of the Dead, yeah.
Where they have those little scenes where it's all very close-ups of the drums and it moves very quickly and it's tightening the cymbals and stuff like that, and it's kind of like a mini montage to get to the point. Very quick exposition, and every time the guy's playing the drums and he's got to hit that tempo. The film is all about tempo. And it builds on you, the tension and the speed of the music builds and builds over an hour and a half till that minute when they both break and they have the breakthrough. And that breakthrough at the performance at the end of the film explains why J.K. Simmons is the way he is, why he was pushing Teller. And sometimes if you want to be great at something, you have to make sacrifices. And I came out to that film going, if I have to be harsh on somebody like that in my life to get the greatness out of them or to bring greatness out of myself, then maybe I'm going to have to be a bastard. And what's wrong with that? So it gave me a really great revelation on not watching a film for so long because it promoted bullying in regards to, if you want to be great at something, sometimes you need to be broken. And I loved it. And not all stories have to have happy endings necessarily, because it's a very weird ending to the film because it just stops. And you think you're going to get more, and it's like, no, we're going to leave you there.
A very Sopranos-like ending.
Yeah. And sometimes that is the best way to end the film.
And one thing that I think if you're a musician, you'll really appreciate about this film is just like the craft of playing an instrument. And like with me, I play 2 instruments, and just the amount of time and dedication to really be proficient at your instrument, like it takes a lot of times. And sometimes too, when you have band directors or teachers or stuff, they will be hard on you to be like, okay, you need to get this and you have this amount of time, and if you don't get it by this amount of time, then like, what are we doing here? Why am I teaching you? And so it's kind of, you have to push yourself in certain ways to get to that greatness. And you see that in athletes all the time. They push themselves to the limit. Kobe Bryant, when he was alive, they said he was always there hours before games shooting shots to be as good as he was on the court. You see that in LeBron. You see that in now Jimmy Butler for the Miami Heat, the way he approaches the game and how much he puts everything into the game of basketball. And you see that athletes, Serena Williams. So it's very much, if you want to be at that level, there is a push.
Which is something you don't normally see in biopics, for example, is they show you the stories of the events of that person's life, but they very rarely touch on the emotional struggle. And to be an athlete for 10 years means that you can only do you can have time for a family, but you have to make sure that time is post-season and stuff like that. And they never really touch on those bases. And the thing I loved about like Whiplash, for example, if you were to know jazz as a musical genre, it was a very ballsy decision to go on drums when you wouldn't necessarily associate the drums as the most important part of jazz. But that's what I loved about the director's choice, because he wanted the film to be about tempo, and what's the most important thing about tempo in jazz is the drummer. And there's a juxtaposition there without realizing you're being shown the juxtaposition, and it makes you read more into the story, which is...
As a non-percussionist, percussion is so important, and sometimes it's even more important than the conductor. There's so many times that like I've lost my place and I listen back to the drums to find it, either in marching band or just in concert band. And we did not plan this, but I also have a movie that is about percussion, a little different than Whiplash, and that is the movie Drumline.
Yes, so
So
I've heard of this film,
I
but not seen it.
it right now is on HBO Max, which I know you do not have in the UK, unfortunately. So I don't know.
Funnily enough, as you mentioned, it's on Disney Plus now because Disney Plus have just launched Star
Oh,
today.
really?
So I've just had even more stuff added to my
To
timeline
your
today.
list.
So
Nice.
stuff like Rushmore, which was unavailable in the UK until today, and I can finally watch Logan.
Oh, nice. So good. It's so good. But with drumline, yeah, like I was saying,
That's
I
it.
was band kid. I did winter percussion in high school, but I played the cymbals. So like that's like, can I really call myself a percussionist? I don't think so.
But the best thing about stuff like drum lines, for example, is you have to learn two skills. Like not only do you have to stay in time with the music, you have to parade as well, don't you? So
Yeah, it's in marching band, and I think they did a 30 for 30 or a 60 minutes, or I forget exactly what it was. Like I think it was an ESPN doc or something. I don't know where it is. It's on YouTube. You can watch it, where they strap up this whole thing to a guy playing percussion. It's years ago. A percussionist in a DCI band, Drum Corps International, which is here in the United States, and it was showing the athleticism it is to be a marching band, and the fact that it was saying that your heart rate is at the rate of like someone who's sprinting, but your
yeah,
breathing is at the rate of someone who's running a marathon. Because and that the second you hear the music, like it automatically your heart rate spikes, even for when the guy was on the sidelines not playing. And so that it is the combination of a performance where you're performing and playing your instrument, which you have to have that craft, and then also marching in time and making sure you're
mm,
getting to the right sets and having those numbers in your head. So you're having to have the music and the numbers and all of those things
mm.
going on in your head at the same time. And it can be very difficult. And you're all having to do that at the same time. And one thing that this movie says all the time is one band, one sound, which is so true in band is that one person messes up. They play the wrong note. If they get to the wrong set, if they any of those things, it can mess up the entire band. The entire band can look bad.
Which always reminds me of the funny scene from American Pie Bandcamp when it's a typical trailer trash movie. um, the obviously the Stifler character doesn't know music at all, and he tries to join in with the band, and everything goes wrong, and they all end up going around in different circles.
Right.
And it's just a very particular way of showing the example we're talking about.
Yeah.
And at the very end of the film, he realizes how to be in tune with everybody, and Tal Bachman's aeroplane gets played in perfect symbiote with everybody,
Right.
even if he's only playing the triangle.
And you have this movie is also has very funny moments in it too. I would say like my favorite scenes is like Nick Cannon helping like Zoe Saldana's character with some dance moves. He's like, "Oh, I can help you with some dance moves," and he turns around and starts popping his butt and stuff. Like it's very funny, like him just like
Well, that sounds like Nick
trying to
Cannon.
flirt. Yeah, definitely. And then you have Nick Can so this is at a predominantly black university, and so but there's like this one white guy who's on the drum line, and he lost his spot to be on the line, and he's trying to get it back, and so Nick Cannon's helping him, and they're kind of like alone together, and he's like, "You gotta love your drum," and he means like, "No, no, I mean like love it, like have the groove, like you're about to, with your drum goes to be able to get the right rhythm and stuff." And so he's like saying these things. He's like, "No, don't pound it like a virgin." Like he says like something like that. And like the people outside can hear them outside of that room. And so it sounds like these two guys are doing something, but it's really they're just playing the drums, but it sounds like they're
Yeah,
having sex. So it's really funny.
it becomes like human dressage. It's like yeah, you have to become one with your horse almost.
Right? And then I will say though, the most unrealistic thing about this movie is that the band director's like, "We're gonna play Earth, Wind, and Fire," and all the band kids are like, "Oh," and I'm like, every band kid loves to play Earth, Wind, and Fire. So that is the most unrealistic thing about this movie. But other
Yeah,
than that, like,
no marching band would ever play disco. Just it would never work. Now I just have the vision in my head of them all dancing around going, da-na-na, na-na-na-na. Yeah,
no, band
that would be
kids
something for me to
love
do
playing
later.
oldies. Like my favorite song that we would play in both I played it both in high school and in college is Word Up. Like that song
All
was
right, yeah.
so fun to play, and I've marched both clarinet and baritone, so that's a low brass instrument, and it's one of those where I can tell you I was like, "Oh, this song I prefer playing it on clarinet or this song I prefer playing it
Yeah.
on baritone." Word Up is the only song that I was like, either instrument, it's so good, and I like both parts.
Yeah. I'd like to say I have a tremendous love for 50s and 60s music, and anything like Ray Charles, Jackie Wilson, Fats Domino, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I love wind instruments and all the beauty of a slow band song back in the day, and that's a discussion for another time. But just the beauty of old fashioned instruments. Like I'm a big rock music fan nowadays, but I can quite easily go back and enjoy that kind of music instead.
Yeah, and I love musicians that are bringing band instruments back. Because, like, obviously, Earth, Wind, and Fire, I've seen them play with a full orchestra behind them, and that's the coolest thing. But, like, you have bands like Chicago, which, yeah, that's not a new band, but you have that. And then you have even rappers nowadays that are starting to put violins or horns into their music. You see, Panic at the Disco, uh, Brendan Urie's been adding saxophones and trumpets and low brass into some of his songs. So
Yeah, and
I
it
definitely,
just brings another dimension of beauty into music. That
hmm
because at the end of the day, just because it's heavy doesn't mean it can't be also romantic.
right. So we're gonna go now into WandaVision spoilers. If you have not seen the most recent episode, leave now, come back. Go, yeah, leave now, go watch it, come back, and listen to us talk WandaVision. So far, yeah, this is probably going to be a conversation that we have every week. So at the end of each episode of Soul Talk, we're going to be talking WandaVision spoilers until WandaVision is over. So, what do you think of that most recent episode, Darren?
Um, I I get why people have been a bit like this was the worst episode of the season so far, because the problem with MCU fans at the minute is they ask for answers and then they don't like answers. It's like, make your mind up. I'm like, so every series has an ending, and when you
Mhm.
get the ending, you're like, oh, I wasn't ready for the ending yet. You're like, but the whole that whole, like you said, it's just come up on the picture. Agatha all along,
It was Agatha all along.
and the my favourite part of that little montage was where she was sat on the grass with a picnic basket,
Yeah, just going like,
giving Pietro his little,
yeah.
there you are, because she's obviously trying to get to an end game with
hmm
Wanda, and she knows how to push her buttons. We don't know exactly yet why she's pushing her buttons, which is why I'm loving the show so much, because it's giving you just enough to keep you intrigued every week.
Yep.
Plus, it's giving you everything from the superhero story. Like, I am a classic superhero fan, so I'm the Captain America, Iron Man, Silver Surfer, Fantastic Four fan. So for me, because this is all new, there's nothing I can't enjoy about it, because I don't really know what's going on. So every time they tell me something, I am eating it up. The look of the show, because obviously a lot of the sitcoms being used are American. So as some
Mhm.
person from the UK, they're like, yeah, this is like this. I love Lucy, and I'm like, if you say so. I'm beginning to sound like Matt knows. I'm eating it up because it's all new to me, but it's superheroes. I love superheroes, so I'm not going to complain at the moment. I love the style of the show, the my favorite word again, the quirkiness of it. But the music is fantastic.
Yes.
You're getting the old sitcom stuff, the comedy. Paul Bettany, who I've seen in like 3 films this week alone,
And it was
acting is
Catherine Hahn singing Agatha all along. That was her voice singing.
exactly, and
Yeah.
they're all getting these chances to shine in
Hmm.
in characters they've not played a lot. Like Paul Bettany's either a romantic British gentleman or a bad guy, and now he's playing something in between.
Right.
And what I love about the Vision character is he's so intelligent, but he actually isn't. In the superhero world that he's involved in, he's so out of the loop. You got to realize that we've only had him in like 1.5 films. He gets created in Age of Ultron, but he's not the big part player other than that big, huge fight scene in Sokovia, which is, I think, one of my favourite MCU moments of all time.
Oh, really?
When they do the Michael Bay shot in the, I think
Yeah.
it's like a castle, and it
Yeah.
spins round and they're all in a circle. That's like ultimate comic book page Avengers style.
Hmm.
And then other than that, he's locked in a room with Wanda and then dying.
Yeah.
So it's such a complex character that we're still, I think, only touching the base on the minute. So
Yeah.
I'm very curious to see where they go with Vision. Same with Wanda. It's like she's still from where she came as an introduction in Ultron. We still really haven't touched base with those characters yet because there's been so much time focused on Thor, Captain America, Iron Man. So I'm
Yeah.
excited to see where it goes.
I love that we started with this. I know that we were supposed to start with Black Widow and then get Falcon and Winter Soldier and then Eternals and then this. I'm glad that we started the new phase with this show because it is so unique. And
I said, do you
we
want me
did
to
get
text tomorrow if I finish early?
Sorry about
no problem. We did get
That's got to rush off to her dad's.
we did get answers to this, which we got the reveal that Agnes was Agatha Harkness the whole
that.
time. It was
Yeah,
Agatha all along.
You watch you
We
don't
got
tip
to
over on your way
see
home.
we got to see what happened to Darcy, which it would her joke of I secretly wanted to be a part of the show, but no. And then
exactly. It's like 2 different shows now merging into one.
exactly. And then got to see Monica Rambeau's superhero origin.
Yeah,
She's
which
getting her
which
powers.
I'm completely in the dark about that, which is probably the most exciting part of the series for me because I know nothing about Photon or the Monica Rambeau character, so I have no idea why it's happening, why she's so important to Wanda yet. So, whereas
Mm.
people who are so used to the story kind of know what might happen or is going on, I'm in the dark. So, literally in the dark right now,
Yeah. I was like,
as the
you're
sun is going down. But
right.
yeah, so the beauty of this series for me is I have no idea, so it's making it even more enjoyable.
And
I'm
there
getting
are
I'm getting an education at the same time.
yeah, and with all the answers that we've gotten, we're still have questions, which that's what this show's been doing. It's been answering questions and then giving us more questions. So my big 3 questions that I have right now is what's happening to the hex because we see the game controllers changing through generations and then changing to Uno. We see the milk changing. We see stuff going on with the hex, the living room furniture and the TV changing. I want to know
Yeah,
what
they
happened to
they
those twins and then that mid-credit scene, which we haven't seen. They've had long-ass credits and haven't had a credit scene yet. And we've been trained to watch the entire thing with these past 11, 12 years of the MCU that we're like, oh, where is this? And then they finally give us a mid-credit scene.
Oh,
And
like they are changing the rules on us in the show week by week. They're like, so you think you can watch every frame of the show and pick out something? Nah, let's see if we can train you to pick out the parts of everything.
Yeah.
I think they're also throwing in stuff that doesn't even matter, just to make us speculate, because they know we'll stop.
Just to fuck with us, man.
Yeah. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if the missing person on the milk bottle was just a picture of Kevin Feige, just because they can do it.
Right?
Like, we got you.
I know that like some people are speculating that it was Wiccan. That was the missing person, which like the twins, which you saw too, when she goes into that basement, the aspect ratio changes, and it changes to the aspect ratio that is the real world outside of the hex. So is that basement in the real world? And if so, are her kids only real in the hex and not real in the real world?
Yeah, very much like when Vision tries to exit the hex, he falls apart because in the outside world something has already happened to him. So it's they're playing, like I say, they're playing on the basis of reality, but they've also not explained what the exact reality is. The main question I had with WandaVision so far is the previous episode where they show it might be the episode before, when they show Monica Rambeau's timeline of when the blip happens. The main thing I got from that is, so that blip is happening there. At that same time, Thanos is blowing the crap out of the Avengers compound.
Right.
And I was trying to piece it together. I was like, you've got to remember that this is happening to people in the real world, because obviously, the planet's huge. But you've got to remember, at this time in the timeline, there is a huge fight going with all these comic book characters, coming out of portals. That's what I love. It's like, it's such a big story. They are showing you in parts from different perspectives. And we're going to get, what Falcon and Winter Soldier is set afterwards, which is going to give us another facet. And it's just so exciting to realise that we're getting so many different timelines all at once before we even get the Multiverse of Madness, which is going to expand it even more.
Yeah, I'm so excited to see what Kevin Feige and the MCU does going forward. Any final thoughts on WandaVision?
Make sure that the final thought is, like, I really, obviously, because a lot of speculation with it. They keep saying we're getting longer episodes, and then they don't. I love how they're messing with us with that. But I would really be excited if they do this Phantom episode, because obviously they've been using that sitcom trope stuff. I would love if we got a behind the scenes episode that's actually an episode. I think that would be one of the most. I would
love that.
I think that's one of the most outrageous but creative ideas that somebody's ever had for a TV show, where it's like we could get like a mid-episode blooper reel, which has never been done before, and I think that would be one of the funniest things we've ever seen.
Please, Kevin Feige, please. I didn't even know that I wanted that until you said it, and now I want it.
And because what they can do is they can throw you a curveball. They can do like a blooper reel, but then reveal something in the bloopers that's detrimental to the story, and you'll be like, that is the cleverest bit of writing I have ever seen in my life.
I want it now.
They literally, because they could do a scene with Pietro, for example, that's a blooper, and it tells you why Pietro was there in the first place, and you're like, wow, did they just do that to us? And you'd be like, your jaw would be on the floor, because you'd never see it coming.
I want it now. But we're going to conclude. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say, that is the beauty of what we're getting from the MCU now. They've given us 20 years of who we know, Hulk, Iron Man, all these trilogies. And now we're into the unknown. We've got multiverses, we've got the Eternals, which is, the origin of superheroes thousands of years ago. And in the next 10, 15 years, we get a whole new regeneration, and it'll be like, there is nothing not to be excited about. And as a geek,
Well,
being excited is all I want.
exactly. Well, as we see that it's getting very dark for Darren right now, we're going to conclude this episode of Soul Talk. Where can the people find you, Darren?
So, yeah, you can find me on John Roker's Discord. If anybody is obviously a fan of John Roker, I'm always on the Discord. As you can see, at Skipper646, I stream on Twitch where I swear at computer games. Other than that, you will always find me in chat rooms. I'm not exactly I wouldn't say I'm like a host or anything at the moment. I am still building up to that in the future. But anyone ever wants to have a chat on stereo or anything like that about geek stuff, you'll find me. Just look for Skippy646 or Darren Wright 646, and I'll be around. And I will talk your ears off.
And do it, because I love hearing Darren talk about literally anything. And also, you get that beautiful British voice. Like, don't you want that in your life, people?
Exactly. Not everyone can sound as beautiful as me.
100%. So you can find me at SoulGovin on Twitter and at soul.k.govin on Instagram, and here every Wednesday for Soul Talk. So goodbye, everyone. See you next week.
Bye-bye.